thrilled to have the founder and owner of Stronghold Construction.
We ended up right about $500,000 in our first year. This year, we're going to triple it.
Can you talk about how you've built your team for long-term success?
What are you doing to set yourself apart?
I would rather be the dumbest person in the room and be well-informed.
What other trends are you seeing change in the commercial space that other contractors aren't touching on yet?
There's such a hunger for alternative delivery.
What do you see changing specifically in commercial construction the next 5 years?
Honestly, the projects are there and the workforce is not.
I want to hear more about this partnership.
Just because someone on the surface says that they're a good partner does not mean that you can work with them.
Welcome to Beers with Contractors.
All right, tradies. Welcome to another episode of Beers with Contractors. Terry, we cracked them open a little bit early today.
Yeah, it's okay. It's good for whatever day of the week it is.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, I tell you, man, it's getting warm outside. We're getting into storm season. That should be wild. So before we get into that, though, and the other wild things going on in the world, like, subscribe. Be sure to hit that notification button. Speaking of which, Lenins, Mike Ryback, Matt Hamilton, Too Cool DB, Hatfield Rods, and Jimmy Shortsmith. Welcome to the show. Thank you for subscribing. Appreciate you guys. Terry, Lord Terry, I know that you are all into politics, right?
With every bated breath.
Yeah, that's your third favorite thing to look out for and follow. So let's talk about Trump's first 100 days. Do you want to guess how many executive orders he threw out in his first 100 days? It's a record.
I felt like there was at least one a day for like the 100 days. So I'm going to go with 100 or more.
Yeah, 140. Over 140 executive orders in the first 100 days. It's like, dude, that's a lot of shit that's getting changed. But I wanted to narrow down. Have you been reading up on some of the stuff that's related to construction, though? I think, like, I'm seeing a lot of good things. I don't know if you're seeing it, but now obviously we're not seeing it in real life yet. Have you seen some of these things, like the infrastructure stuff? And we know guys in civil work.
Yeah. Well, my feeling is they're laying the groundwork for a lot of good things to come down the pipes. But no, I think from a lot of what I've seen, a lot of the regulation and red tape and a lot of those things are being cut back. I think everything's being disrupted at times. But I mean, if we're looking for results in the first 100 days, I mean, I think we're getting started, right?
Yeah. So it's funny, $1 trillion infrastructure plan for roads, bridges, airports, and public work projects. So our friends at AOGC, they will like that. Obviously, a lot of civil work going on.
Yep.
Also, executive orders to reduce federal regulations, particularly involving environmental rules, aiming to speed up construction permitting in the Energy Department, which also dovetails to declaring steps to boost U.S. oil and gas production, easing drilling permits. And wait a minute, you brought up some fun fact before the show today about Gulf of America. What was that? I forgot it.
Well, you know, you went through and everyone's up in arms about changing Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, right? But the idea is that now that we can get back in there and start drilling in the Gulf of America and producing our own energy. So we're going to tap into that.
Oh, yeah, because the blocks were like around Gulf of Mexico, right? But now that the name's changed. And when I was in Pensacola a few weeks ago, there's signs everywhere that have been changed literally from Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, which I thought was hysterical. But here's the big ones. Housing and land development. This is what helps us contractors out. So federal lands are starting to be sized up for sale for housing development and increased supply. These are all unused federal properties. You have unused federal properties around your place up in Guthrie?
No, I don't think we have any unused federal property. All federal property I know about is used.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be kind of cool. Reverse guidelines on appraisal bias. So I had to look this up. I didn't even know this was a thing. So that was some processes set up by the Biden administration to speed up closing process. Of course, tons of stuff in real estate. Of course, Trump was a big real estate guy, but didn't make that 2% reduction in mortgage rate promises. But that's a tall order. Man.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if you think about the last 100 days of your life, what have you done, right? I mean, like personally, I've got a little bit of yard work done and maybe some spring cleaning, but I don't think I've signed 140 anythings yet.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, that's a whole lot of ink. But And it's funny, we talk about permitting and speeding those up. I mean, gosh, could you imagine trying to get 143 permits pushed in construction? Hell no, it's not going to happen. But anyway, speaking of construction, I'm glad to have another commercial guy on the podcast today. It's been a while. And man, I just love this space. I'm obviously the home service guy, so I get to look at the big numbers and the cool projects that these folks work on. So today, thrilled to have the founder and owner of Stronghold Construction. He's built a reputation in the commercial construction space for tackling complex projects and delivering high-quality results while scaling a fast-growing company, and albeit a young company that's doing insanely well. Love these stories. So with a background that blends hands-on construction experience, sharp entrepreneurial instincts, Zach has positioned Stronghold as a go-to firm for clients who demand excellence. We're excited to hear about his journey, insights, and his trends in shaping the future of commercial. So welcome, Zach Simmons from Stronghold. Zach, welcome to the party, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so before we get started, what law did you break, and why were you sentenced to know and work with Terry Kleinfelter?
Oh, well, I got to rep the OSU. So,
Oh, that's it. Oh, did you see how he hit that?
yeah, got it right there.
Right there.
No, construction community is small in Oklahoma, so I'd heard about Terry, and one of the guys that we hired actually went through Terry's program at OSU, and that we kind of made that connection there, finally got to meet, and just
Nice.
kind of downhill from there.
Yeah, well, so it was downhill upon meeting Terry. I've heard this from many of our guests.
Yeah. There's a Knuckle Draggers Anonymous group that we're all part of.
Yep. Yeah.
Terry, I'm starting to think like, the movie with Billy Bob Thornton, The Bad News Bears, the new version, not the Walter Matthau one. Like, that's your program over there at OSU. You just take all the wrongdoers and the roughnecks. And no, I'm joking.
Hey, at least the graduates from OSU can actually build something.
Yeah. Oh, shots fired. Watch out.
Hang on now.
No, that's
I'm
okay.
kidding.
You're good. So, Zach, obviously, you know Terry through the industry, but let's take a step back a little bit. Like, what got you started in construction? What drew you to the industry? And then we'll dive into the deep thoughts.
Yeah, being voluntold to the industry is probably the best summary. I'm second generation trades, so I grew up. My father owned a commercial industrial electrical company. And, some of my earliest memories, I was out in a converted semi-trailer to a job trailer on an industrial site. I don't know, memory serves probably 5 or 6 years old, with highlighters at a plan table, coloring plan notes, and my payment was a handful of pistachios and a Fireball candy for every plan page that I highlighted. So, I mean, construction runs deep. I think that kind of predates the liquor even being created. You'd have to get hot damn back then. That transpired pretty much all through my youth, coming up, being on job sites. I was homeschooled growing up, so, schoolwork was compressed between 4 and 6 a.m. because we were at the office by 8. You get out there and got my journeyman's card pretty young. Went after my contractor's license pretty young. We had transitioned to a general contractor in, my mid to late teens, and I was really doing electrical and general contracting. So other than a short stint at the fire department, I've been in it all my life.
So you got your journeyman's card at what age, Zach?
Gosh, I want to say, when did I hit so I came on the hours requirement sooner than the allowable age limit by the state. And CIB was having an issue with child labor laws, saying that I didn't have the time availability to hit those hours. So officially got it at 18.
Nice. Well, that's awesome, because I think like we're seeing more and more younger folks start into getting their hours sooner rather than later.
Yep.
In looking at what was available even 10 years ago to today, boy, the entry to the market is just crazy.
Well, what's interesting, Will, is to think about like child labor laws and how they're applicable nowadays. Like, I don't think my father knew about those. And my expectation is none of our family knew what child labor was and why it might not be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm glad to hear this because, well, I grew up in a construction family as well, and I got voluntold just like you, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's one of those where it's like, it's obviously taking you to some places. So after you got through with working in the family business, where was the transition? Did you transition out of the family business when you got your degree, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I actually went to school. I went to OSU. I went through the fire program to be a firefighter. The good thing about being a firefighter is, you'll only have several days on a week. And so, being at the fire station or being at AMSA here in Oklahoma City, I was still in construction through that whole time. Ultimately, the family business, my dad just wanted to retire. So it was, as opposed to selling it, it was just shut it down, liquidate the material, liquidate the equipment. And, there was enough there for him to retire well. And, ultimately I decided that the fire department life wasn't going to be for me. And so from there, I did some home service stuff, did on the electrical side, and then really bounced pretty much immediately after that back into the general construction side of things on the general contracting side. Really started what I thought was a superintendent. I thought I knew how to be a superintendent and was very quickly corrected in that. Working at OU, working at local medical centers, and really just getting thrown into jobs. The term fake it till you make it goes around the industry quite a bit. And, I would say between 20 to, probably 22, I was in that fake it till you make it kind of phase. Ultimately ended up in the DFW area and working for a couple of really good companies down there. That's really when my career started to accelerate, and getting, really good mentors, getting to travel. I got to travel as a superintendent and PM for doing Fortune 500. And, I went everywhere from pretty much New York to LA and Seattle to Miami. So that gave me the basis that outside of, I knew how to build things. I knew the trend of construction. I knew how to interact with trades. I knew, what needed to be done, but it was the back end logistical processes that I had to be formally trained on. And when you're working remote like that, or you're working in, plus $250 million bond settings in Dallas for an independent school district, you have to learn those things really fast.
That's crazy.
Now, Zach, as long as I've known you, you've been with Stronghold and running that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take us through exactly what all you are in, what you all do, and kind of the segment of the market you hit on?
Yeah, absolutely. So Stronghold is actually comprised of 3 owners, one of the partners. You want me to start in our specialties or kind of how we started first?
Just kind of like how you started and how you evolved, because I think that's important to some of our listeners, because they might be doing one thing and they want to get into something else.
Yeah.
Sure.
And Zach, we already know that you were voted best by you and your mom. And like 80% of what you build is still standing and all. No, I'm just joking.
79.
Yeah. 70.
I can't hit that 80 yet.
No. So Roy Lewis and Danny Warner, they're the other 2 partners in Stronghold. We collectively, we have an even share, and we all knew each other predating Stronghold. Ultimately, my wife and I had moved back from Dallas, moved back home to Oklahoma, and I was working for another relatively new general contractor at the time as a PM. And the other partner, Roy, said, he called me up 2022 and, posed the idea, say, hey, I have this opportunity. I think I have, a way for us to really kick this thing off. Would you be interested in coming over? And, kicking this, I really don't want to do this thing without you. Would you come over? And oddly enough, at the exact same time, I had probably the most lucrative offer that I had had from another local general contractor that, it was just through the roof on pay scale. And so I had to weigh those options at pretty much the same time. Am I going to start my own thing, with the guys, or am I going to take easy street on something that I know that I'm going to collect a nice big fat check for the next several years? Ultimately, and thankfully, it came down to something that my wife told me. She goes, you work the hours already. Why would you not own a piece of it? So, that kind of stuck with me. But yeah, no, we launched February 22nd of 22. So 2/2/22.
So along with everyone else getting married on that day, you launched
exactly. Yeah. we
That's funny.
launched. I actually didn't transition until later that June, coming in full time, just getting the wheels turning. And, I wanted to be, be good to the people that was good to me and, close out some projects. And so I ended up coming over in June of 22, and we really just kind of kicked off from there. Ultimately, we knew from our perspective that the industry was broken, and the way that we had seen private development, we had seen, and even public, in how projects were bid, how they were being awarded, the budget deficits, the plan deficits in, we'll call it 79% of the jobs that, we had all touched. They all seemingly had the same systematic issues. So we say Stronghold was actually created out of frustration rather than opportunity. We ultimately collectively said there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a different method, something that we could bring to the industry that, it's the aspect of, go back to the 60s or 70s. You had budget deficits, but really when you shook somebody's hand and handed them a piece of paper, say, I could build it for this, you were going to build it for that. Mm-hmm. And so, how do we get back to that aspect, living in a modern world and competing in a modern market? So that's kind of what we set out to do. We really didn't have a true sense of direction other than just trying to find something better. We did a little bit of public. Our first job, we actually got awarded from City of Norman in October of 22. So we kicked it off pretty early in the public sector. And then right about that same time, we were also awarded our first design build program with a tribal nation up north. So smaller program, just 3 projects in total, 2 remodels and 1 ground up. And they were coming off the heels of a method called CMGC for another program, which they just essentially said, well, it's design build when we solicit it. But when we got in there, they're like, it's really not design build. We want you to do this, which it's somewhere in the middle between, construction manager at risk and design build, and a little bit of get it done faster than anything we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we got that from them. And we also got invited to another tribal program because we got awarded that one, that it was the same guys that were running CMGC, the textbook method that had just come out of the guys that we had just been awarded from. And so we got to learn kind of the simplified, more owner-corrected method, as well as the textbook method right at the same time on 2 completely different programs. And, it wasn't long and it hit us that, gosh, this is so much better than anything that we've seen in the industry. And so we really just kind of took it and ran with it. So, since then, just a quick summary, we've been really heavily focused on tribal work. We are veteran owned, so we try to maintain and, chase stuff out at Tinker and, military bases, in Oklahoma. A little bit of private development in there. I've always admired Stan Lingo and kind of the Lingo model and how he's built his business. And so we're just we're spanning the gambit right now. I'd say our specific niche is educating clients in the market on what's available, that you don't have to go low bid. You don't have to follow, what everybody else has been doing for the last 50 years, and that there is different things available. And, we're really still working off of kind of word of mouth. We're chasing some stuff, but we've been blessed enough that work has been coming to us.
So, Zach, the interesting thing about this, we know a mutual friend of ours, the Robertson family over at ESI. They're the first time I heard about your name specifically. I just love this idea of just conceptualizing a thought, making a business, staking your claim on the entrepreneurial world, as you guys have. One thing we haven't identified, sounds like 2022. That's a pretty young company. So from 0 to today, what are you guys on target to complete in projects for the end of this year?
Well,
and don't undersell yourself, Zach. I know you guys have grown, and I've gotten to experience it from, like I said, the Robertsons that are getting to see it and work with you guys on the day-to-day, that, like, you guys are doing it right.
Yeah.
And by the way, Terry, you know this. In construction, nobody embellishes their numbers ever, right? Never.
It's always what we say it is.
And I know that there's a bunch of talented people out there that had the background you did that are like, man, I really want to take this dive. And we've seen this with folks like Lingo and Tacco and other companies. It's like, man, you're doing it. So paint a picture of where you guys are heading at the end of this year.
Yeah, our success thus far, we can only attribute it to some divine intervention. I'll say that. 2022, we ended up right about $500,000 in our first year.
Wow.
23, we did somewhere just north of 2 million. Last year in actual whip, we closed out just under 5, and this year we're probably going to triple it this year from last year. We do have, which I can't necessarily account it to revenue this year, but we've got somewhere around about 100 million in backlog on
Wow.
programs that we're actively working in pre-construction.
Dude, that is killer, man. That is just awesome.
Yeah. We've been very lucky. Historically, you look at companies in Oklahoma, and there's been very few that have been able to grow that fast and maintain that growth. And that's been one of our main concerns, is how do we effectively manage this growth and not be the hot new kids on the block, and then 6 months later we don't exist.
So hold on, I want to clarify one thing. Terry and I, we are partners in crime, by the way.
Never convicted.
Yeah, innocent until proven guilty, right, Terry?
Yep.
Yeah. So, partnerships. I want to hear more about this partnership aspect, because I do believe, like, to be clear, I get picked on a little bit because I am in a partnership. I'm also in a partnership with my wife. So it's like, that's different, Will, but it's not exactly different. But I do believe partnerships in a business can be very great things, and they de-risk quite a bit on the startup.
Absolutely.
And we play strengths and weaknesses. So let me ask you this. Who's the smart one of the bunch? Who's the riskier one of the bunch? No, I'm kidding. Zach, you don't have to answer.
No, I'm absolutely the risk one.
Oh, okay, cool. So, all right. So if you're
Risky and risk.
Terry, he didn't say he was the smart one. That's funny, Zach. But no, like, advice on partnerships. Like, how did you get, because unlike most, you have 3 partners. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so
33 split.
Yeah, how does that fucking hierarchy work? Like, how have you guys established that in a good way to scale the company to what you guys are now?
Tradies, running your small business can be demanding. You got suppliers you got to work with. You're managing crews. Hell, you're chasing sales. It's a lot to take in. Listen, if you want to grow your business, you got to stop working in it and you got to start working on it. So that's where my friends at Foundation Rescue Supply come in. You're not just getting foundation repair products and waterproofing products and air quality control products. With their nationwide distribution, you're getting a partner who knows how to help you scale. And that's why I use them. The Foundation Rescue Supply team has industry knowledge that'll help make your life easier. You get the tools, the trainings, the systems that you need to move the needle. You want your sales team to close more leads? Done, because they have the proven process for that. You need your crews to work smarter, not harder? Done. Their installation training will get you out there and rocking and rolling in the field. With Foundation Rescue Supply, you're not just buying materials here. You're buying a better business system that they have helped create. And you sell more, you install more, and you grow your team. So the bottom line is this: you get best industry pricing, you get field productivity on track, and you get more revenue out of everybody on your team. So this is your chance to step up, scale up, and thrive. If you are ready to make that happen, head to foundationrescuesupply.com, check out their catalog, and speak to my friends, their team, how you can take beyond the products with your company with Foundation Rescue Supply.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing that, and we can all agree, and we've talked about it quite a bit. We had some real early, we'll call them partners, call them contributors to the business, that, inside a year, we learned really quickly that that wasn't going to work. And so, that initial group reduced to, like I said, Roy, Danny, and myself. Like I said, before we kicked off the recording, I'm the knuckle dragger of the group. I'm the construction guy. So how we're kind of broken up, Roy comes from city planning. He was actually a city of Oklahoma City public planning department and federal funding. He was pretty senior there with a background in C-suite for a pretty large developer, pretty well known in Oklahoma. And so combined his C-suite with the city aspect and the political aspect. Roy sits as our CEO, and he really sits in that long-term forecasting, the kind of the corporate to the business model aspect to it, and really optimizing our operations from a risk reduction standpoint, I guess is the best way to put that. Danny comes from a long background in banking, which we had some back and forth really early on because, learning construction accounting is, it's a very unique thing. And I'm so thankful for Danny being on the money side as our CFO, just because the normal things that we accept as far as finance and construction, he came into this industry with a fresh set of eyes. And especially from the banking industry, he would look at a pay app that was 15 days late. It's like, well, what does the contract say? Well, it says net 30. Why did we not get a check on the 31st day? It's in black and white right there. Why, it's in the contract, we all know that there's some exceptions in there, but it's been very refreshing to me, and kind of, I've taken a new look at construction budgeting, construction finance, construction accounting, and, Stronghold very much operates on a non-typical accounting set. For example, if we get paid net 10, well, subcontractor checks are going out net 11. We're not asking for a discount. We're not asking for an early pay, whatever. They're just going out. So, between those two guys, we have very differing strong suits, and we'll call it internal trust, and, call it knowing and having a level of trust with those guys that we can stand on each other's decisions. If we are discussing something that leans into really one of our strong suits, the other two of us just kind of back out. Say, well, this is finance, or this is risk reduction, or, corporate structure. This is operations. This is, direct construction management. And we leave those decisions to, the one with the background in it. And, thus far, we haven't had any major missteps.
Very nice. Now, Zach, you kind of talked about it just now, but Stronghold is a young company, and you guys are setting yourself apart as different in the industry. What are some of the things that you're doing that are different than your competitors and that your owners are liking?
So I would say base format, we are almost all but refusing to do low bid. We are staying somewhat connected to the low bid market. We're mainly using it more as a market validation tool, just to make sure that we are staying competitive. There's a lot of people that, we're young. There's a lot of good contractors that we haven't met yet that, primarily play in low bid market. And so until the industry kind of shifts in Oklahoma, it's almost a necessary evil. But if we get handed a project, we are without question looking at that project as an open book, open accounting format almost since day one. We show our books and our internal budget to all of our clients. And, we are essentially, it's not necessarily cost plus, but, in CMGC or progressive design build, it's a complete open book process. We don't have any hidden books. We don't have any hidden schedules. We don't have anything that is, we'll say proprietary. We are very much working in partnership with these clients to develop the projects. So subcontractor commitments, subcontractor change orders, internal budget transfers, they're seeing those all open book. Outside of that, we don't charge change orders to our clients, really, unless there is a requested addition of scope. It's when we go to GMP and we're setting that final contract, that's going to be the final number unless you asked for more. So I'd say that, and there's several other that are doing something similar, but we've really leaned into that. And I don't think that there's anybody that's doing both the no change orders and the complete open book financials.
So have you ever read Jack Stack's The Great Game of Business, Zach? So
I haven't.
that's so crazy. It was written by Jack Stack. He was taking over International Harvester when they were failing, of course, an employee-owned company. And that was a big thing. They went through like open book accounting with all of their frontline and their employees.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of that going in the reverse aspect to the customers, which I think is just like, by the way.
It's a little wild.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredibly wild, but it seems to have served you well.
Yeah.
And I want you to elaborate on this a little bit because, I think a lot of contractors, they get really nervous when trying to pursue some of these government or tribal contracts. And you guys seem to have leaned into that. Like, what caused that? And because I know there's a lot of red tape around those, and it requires a massive amount of attention to detail. So
Sure.
what made you start to really lean into those?
Hiring the right people. first and foremost, you have to have the right tools in the tool bag to be able to do specific projects. And thankfully, we spend so much time in trying to find the right team members and hiring the right team, not only from a culture aspect, which I would say that's probably 75% of our hiring, but we've just been so lucky in having people come to us, because I don't really have a really heavy background in federal or tribal. I've done both a little bit, but based on the experience of some of our senior staff, our senior project manager, our senior superintendent, who are well versed and very comfortable in those federal settings and things like that, DoD. Gosh, it gives us such a leg up in being able to chase those things, and me as an owner to have a level of confidence. I kind of apply the Ronald Reagan method. I would rather be the dumbest person in the room and be well informed.
Yeah.
Having people on our team that have drank the Kool-Aid, and I know that there's a level of trust there, who have bought into the vision of where we're heading and what we're doing. And so when they're digging in, I know they're digging in, and I'm getting 100% of the information, and more than likely I wouldn't be able to derive that myself. So one, that's given us a level of comfortability, and two, DoD, federal, it's just kind of a beast of its own. Once you get through the red tape, and you have to have a team that is prepared for the red tape, if you have a team that's willing to do it, it's great margins.
Zach, I don't want you to give any trade secrets away.
Yeah.
But I want to remind you, we've only got 5 listeners, one including my dad, right? Okay.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
you're in an insanely competitive market. So
Yeah.
like when I hear like good people and nothing, 0 in 2022 to, 100 million in backlog potentially in 2025. Like specifically the people, where the hell are you finding these people? What are you doing to set yourself apart in that? Because that's powerful, Zach. That's massive.
Indeed and LinkedIn, to be completely transparent, on free ads nonetheless. We go through a really strenuous interview process, and I've had people interview with multiple other of the large, we'll call them premier firms in the state, and they said that our interview process was 10 times as stressful as any of those. So
Yeah.
we don't really hold anything
wait
back.
a minute. Did you say that stressful? Like in a negative
Yes.
way? Like, oh, okay. Like,
Yes.
well, veteran-owned business. Yeah, putting through boot camp, bro.
Yeah. We have a culture, and it's kind of funny because, the partners and I, we kind of dictated that and drove that in the beginning. And now I ask the easiest questions. I'm not the one asking the hard questions. We're throwing out plan sheets, and we're throwing out, spec sections, and you got to do, kind of a quasi personality test before we even kick it off. It's a thing. But to answer your question, to be specific, God, there really is no secret sauce to what we're doing. Being transparent, if you break down the larger majority of our work, which is the tribal stuff, I'll tell you what awarded us the first project. We walked in, and being non-tribal owned, being veteran owned helps, but obviously tribal nations want to hire tribal entities. They want to promote a tribal business growth, which we understand. We walked into that tribal nation and said, we have grown up around nations and tribes, all across Oklahoma. Our team's pretty broad, and the level of construction that you've received for the last 50 years is terrible. Give us the opportunity to show you somebody that cares about what they're building out here, and let us show you that we can do better. And then just the level of transparency that we've maintained through that client specifically. And I'll give another prime example. So we're now a year and a half post roughly that award. They put out another solicitation, and we're a vertical contractor. We do some civil, we do some, heavy horizontal, but that's also primarily with really good partners. We chased a solar farm that they put out under solicitation, and were ultimately awarded that project because of the transparency that we ran the project with, in the previous setting, and our willingness to just do what we said we were going to do. The comment was made to us, every contractor that we've worked with always seemingly wants to take advantage of us when we're not looking. And we can say we never felt like that was Stronghold. And ultimately, we credit to the team. We put together a pretty good presentation. We brought a pretty stacked team, so I don't want to discredit that at all. But it really came down to a relationship basis. We had built a relationship on trust and doing what we're saying we're going to do and caring about these projects more than just the dollar value.
Dude, that's awesome. Now, when you went to the tribes with that information, I know you said you walked in, right? Now, literally, did you walk in and just cold outreach? See, that is
Well,
baller,
no,
bro.
hang on.
Terry. No. I know you. It was probably on an appointment basis. But
Yes, yeah, for sure.
seriously, though. I mean, guys, I'm serious. This is massive because I talked to contractors the other day. They're like, "Man, I ain't got no work. It's drying up. I got to throw more money in marketing." It's like, no, literally go drop your cards off. Some information about your company to somebody. Introduce yourself, and then just go do it.
Yeah.
And then when people ask, like, "Why should we choose you?" Just tell them. Tell them.
Yeah. I mean, that was a cold solicitation. Didn't know anybody up there. I mean, it was publicly solicited, but the 3 contractors that showed up were the contractors that had always been there.
Yeah.
I think our RFP was 5 pages.
Oh, wow.
We just, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're about. This is what we want to do. This is what we propose. And, it prompted the interview, the meeting. And, that put us in front of them to really, tell them what we were about, what we wanted to do. And at that point, you have to kind of look back at that history. At that point, we had done one public project that, because of owner requested changes, had barely broken over $1 million. And they're getting ready to hand us a $3.2 million design build program. If you chase it, it's there.
So why is it that your business partners didn't want to call the company Big Balls Construction? Because that's some balls, bro. I'm just kidding. I know it wasn't that name. I'm just teasing, Zach. But
No,
it's
no,
hard to
like,
get
dude,
that on a
I love
card.
the grind.
Yeah, it is.
That's a wrecking company. That's right. My bad. So if any of our listeners, if you want to take that branding and run with it, knock yourself
You're welcome
out.
to.
So.
Yeah.
Now, Zach, one thing that you're talking about is your change in the way commercial construction has been done and should be done, right? What other trends are you seeing change in the commercial space that you're adapting to that you think other contractors aren't touching on yet?
God, there's such a hunger for alternative delivery just in general. We've got, we're one of 7 contractors. I mean, just by luck of the draw, we're one of 7 contractors in the United States that's performing CMGC.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
You take that and, slap 6 other different names on it. And there's, that's probably 30 to 40 contractors across the United States, integrated delivery, progressive design build. There's all variations, but God, at least in Oklahoma, I think people are so tired of low bid that anytime that you even say, hey, there's a different way to build this, or there's a different way to save money, get a actual buildable project. God, there's just such a hunger for it. People, they want to hear, what are you doing? How are you doing that? How are you delivering, a design program that should have taken 3 years in 24 weeks and saving $4 million.
Wow.
So it's there. The other thing that we're really seeing, I mean, we keep calling it changing of the guard. All of the 3 of us are pretty young. Our team is young, and we try to balance out with, wisdom and youth across our team. So, we're not exclusively all my age, but, a lot of the companies that I saw growing up and the companies that have been considered, the paramount companies of construction in Oklahoma, God, they just don't have the same grip that they used to. When you look at, some of that, those teams that, really knock down some of the major projects, well, they're starting to retire. They're starting to age out. They're starting to slow down, even if they're in the industry. And so we keep calling it the changing of the guard. There's getting ready to be a flop that happens. I saw a statistic not too long ago that I think the average age of the construction worker is 52, roughly.
Yeah.
So at some point, there's got to be a flop. I mean, the industry can't all be 60-year-olds. We can't maintain that average. So, with that and the incoming of youth, you're seeing a heavy influx of tech. You're seeing a heavy influx of, call it, I don't know, millennial management, I guess you can say. A little bit softer, a little bit, not as knuckle dragger-ish, but the industry, I call it trend, call it just changing generationally. There's a big shakeup happening in the industry right now.
So elaborate on that a little bit, Zach, because when you're talking about this shakeup, I love the fact of introducing new ideas, new tech, new workforces, which Terry and I work with in the construction camp, and we're seeing just Gen Alpha is gonna, oh man, they are awesome. Yep. I am pumped about Gen Alpha. But what do you see changing specifically in commercial construction the next 5 years when it comes to hiring and technology and things like that?
Well, there's a lot of people talking about it. We've got a deficit in the workforce. So I think we're going to have, honestly, the projects are there and the workforce is not. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have the people that are, quote, in their prime that are just completely overloaded in training staff, bringing up young people, trying to run projects, getting handed bigger, more advanced projects. As the economy shifts, we're already seeing more tech, more private development, more federal funding coming into, like you were talking about, to, just general economy, whether that be civil or utility or whatever. So the projects are coming and we're just not seeing the people there. Mm-hmm. You're going to have, I personally believe that you're going to have a lot of young people going through college that have never touched a trade. And so that produces a very specific result on a general contractor, as they're employed. That produces a very specific kind of superintendent, specific kind of project manager that doesn't look at jobs the same way that someone, that became a project manager 20 years ago would look at. Mm-hmm. So our project management methods are shifting. Thankfully, the tech is coming along with it. You've got things like Procore that are ever growing. You've got, BIM and, CAD growing, and even your small to mid contractors and architects, engineers, they're really making a heavy push into tech. So previously, contractor my size, we'll say small to mid, because I would definitely still consider myself small to mid. I would never touch BIM. You're building the convention center, or you're building the arena at the fairgrounds, or you're building the new Thunder Arena, or you're building a hospital. You're something like that. You're not getting into BIM. No developer is paying you for a BIM model on, even a $15 to $20 million private development. That's coming rapidly. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think I don't want to be completely negative. I think we've got a lot of growth. Yeah. I think it's going to promote a lot of young people going to the trades, young people coming into the construction industry as a whole, which is exciting. But I don't know. I think the jury's still out.
No, hold on. By the way, Zach, you didn't walk in unsolicited, but you walked into one of the tribe buildings, built that relationship, earned that business. So you don't want any BIMs, but hold on. So Terry, we should place a bet right here, actually a dare, that we should have Zach, specifically Zach, walk into wherever it is and submit a bid for the Legends Tower. Have you seen the 1,907-foot building downtown? You got it, Zach. You should just do it just to see if you can nail it.
The Tower of Sauron?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just keep going up. Just add one more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like a bunch of kids in the high school playground. Like, hey, Zach, I dare you to do that.
See, here's the deal. I would, but then my surety and my bonding agent would walk through my front door and just shoot me.
That's funny.
And we would also have, so you remember the scene in War Dogs where they're like, oh, we honestly just wanted to meet you guys.
Yeah.
We wanted to see who underbid it by this much. That would be me.
That would be it, right?
That's actually a great reference. I'm a movie guy. That's perfect.
Zach, you talked a lot about the ownership organization and how you guys complement each other. Can you take that and talk about how you've built your team for long-term success and what that looks like?
Sure. Going back to kind of that interview process, as we're adding members to the team, we grill people and we make that a pretty, in-depth process. But we also, that's where we start, that it's almost a reverse interview. Mm-hmm. We tell people probably more than what we should about who we are, where we're going, what we're doing. And we ask them, hey, this is exactly what we're doing. This is exactly what we expect. This is where we want to be in 10 years. Does that sound like something that you would want to be a part of? Do you have any issues with that? Do you see any flaws in that? And so we lay culture and direction on thick really early. And I mean, we do. I mean, we joke to say, people that come in that, they drink the Kool-Aid because they are as closely protective of our team and what we're doing, probably, to a certain extent more so than, we the owners are. And so there's a really heavy culture basis in our team. And that really all boils down to, at least for myself, offering a vision that someone can agree with, grab onto, and take ownership of. I think, frame of reference for myself, everybody tosses out the corporate, hey, here's the vision. This is what we want this company to be. But you're never given a pathway, or at least I never got the opportunity to grab a hold of that and say, okay, well, this is my piece. I understand this direction. Let me carry this flag and, charge forward with, this direction in mind. It's always kind of glass case. I get, I'm in a glass case of emotion kind of thing. So we probably more so than we should, but we're not going to change it now. I almost give complete anonymity to our team, and I ask questions more so on, okay, well, what do you think the outcome is going to be? And what is, what's your 1-3-1? One well-defined problem, 3 possible solutions, and 1 preferred option. You tell me what you want to do, and then let's talk about it. Does that align with our direction? Does that align with where Stronghold is going? And if we don't agree, why do you see that differently than I do? Okay, well, maybe I need to change my perspective because I feel like your perception of what we have encapsulated as what Stronghold is, I never looked at it like that, or I never saw it in that direction or that light. And what you're telling me now makes a whole lot more sense than what I had in my head. So, giving, even our youngest team members, I'll bring a PE, or an assistant superintendent into an interview, and, they may only be here for a couple months, but hey, what do you think of this person? You're going to have to work next to them. What do you think of them? Can you work with them? Do you think that they're genuine? One of my favorite things to do is asking some of our youngest team members, okay, this decision is going to affect the direction of the company for the next 5 years. What would you do? And just
No
watch their head
pressure.
pop. Yeah. But no, seriously, just very initially offering that direction, making sure that decision making aligned with how we would treat people, treat clients, treat subcontractors. I just had a discussion today with my senior project manager that, we are probably more so than aptitude. Again, back to that Ronald Reagan method. I'm going to give you all of the information, have people around you that can provide you with the information, but do you make decisions like I do? If you are in my seat running the company, because that's what I'm essentially asking you to do, I'm making you make a decision for the direction of the overall company. I'm giving you the ownership of that. How do you make decisions? Does it follow the same moral, ethical, kind of guidelines that I would? And then if it doesn't, okay, well, let's correct that. Well, I would make this decision a little bit differently because of this. Let's fine tune that decision-making process. And at that point, you go back to that attitude and aptitude. Can you make the decisions versus do you have the experience and the wisdom to be able to make that decision? Well, if you have people that surround you that provide you that wisdom and that information, then you're reducing that to a moral and ethical basis. I don't know. It's kind of, again, there's really no secret sauce to it. I'm giving people the freedom to really truly take a piece of what Stronghold is and to build their own piece of the business and take ownership of the department that they're in. And I have to attribute that success to them. It's not any one thing that I've done. It's not anything that Roy and Danny has done. We've just gotten really good people that have taken hold of that vision and that ownership. And God, they carried the flag in places that we never could have.
Well, Zach, because of time, and by the way, I love the 1-3-1. That is sick. Yeah, I'm like, all right, Drake, send me that. Drake, as many of you guys know, is our producer. It's like, send me that short form just for that. I'm going to send it to my company. So, hold on. We talked about attitude. You talked about aptitude. Now I want to talk about assitude. So, You know, I've got my favorite thing in the world is I love to screw it up and screw it up so bad that I can at least brag about it a little bit. I say if you're
Yep.
going to screw it up like a Texan, which was fitting. You were in Dallas for a while, Zach. Hey,
That's true. Yep.
so what's a big kind of screw up you made in business that hopefully you can share with somebody out there and they can learn from?
Oh, man. I told you I was going to have trouble deciding.
From all of them, right? Actually, better
Yeah.
yet, Zach, what's a screw up that was so bad that one of your business partners did that you could brag about it? I'm just kidding. Don't throw them under the bus.
I'll give you two. I'll give you from two aspects. Just industry alone, my last project as a project manager before becoming an owner. And if my previous employer listens to this, I am still sorry. Man, we had this historical building downtown Oklahoma City, and I had to take a single story structure and we were expanding it to a structural steel suspended second story. And so the way that the design, and I mean, it's historical district, so you've got to be precise, make sure that historical is happy with how you're building it, how you're preserving the history. I mean, it had to be exact. Pretty much the way that the design set was, old brick town, Oklahoma City building. You got your top parapet of brick. You've got a structural I-beam that set exposed right on top of it. You've just got a masonry joint in between. And then everything was suspended and you went vertical. I had to be to the 16th with that structural steel shop. I missed it by a foot and a half.
It's not by an inch. Like,
Not by an
it's
inch.
that much.
That much. I had enough space to infill a king brick vertically and still have a gap on both sides. Yeah, that one was pretty rough. That one took a pretty hefty hit on the budget. It was not my most costly.
Was the steel shop local on that one?
The masonry, the brick provider, the steel procurement, and the steel erection was all within about a 20-mile radius.
They all know your name.
Yeah.
Oh, every single one of them.
Oh, man, that's harsh. That's harsh.
As far as just business in general, because that was not even my worst dollar value, but that was just like the most slap myself in the face kind of, God, you're an idiot. God, picking good partners. We made a mistake early. Like I said, there were some parties that, we had wanted to partner with that, looking back, I attribute with, some of our JV partners and at least the internal structure that we have now. God, we are so lucky just in alignment of views, alignment of beliefs, alignment in business, because those early partners, I look back now with, thankfully the wisdom that I've picked up the hard way has been trial by fire. But just because someone on the surface says that they're a good partner or they've got the resume to back it up does not mean that you can work with them.
Yeah.
And so, I've seen a lot of companies, and now looking back, I've seen a lot of companies that had a ton of potential and partnered with just, the wrong entity, the wrong person. And man, if I could go back and do it again or slap myself, about 3 years ago, that would be probably the one thing that I would take back. Pick your partners well and make that the longest thing that you draw out in who you do business with.
Well, Zach, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm excited to meet you face to face. By the
Yep.
way, Terry, did you notice he was holding out with a whiskey in the background back there? He's got 2 glasses and a whiskey bottle.
That is all tequila.
Ooh, man.
Yeah. I can't do whiskey.
Terry showed up to our new office.
I know how you got a foot and a half off on your field drawing, buddy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Zach, I'm an admirer from afar. I love just your story and everything that's going on with your business. I can't wait to see it in 5 years. I'm pumped. So, but if somebody out there is listening, how do they get a hold of you? Obviously, they can visit stronghold.construction. That's your website,
Correct.
right? But how do they reach out to you directly? Is it LinkedIn? Is it email? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah. LinkedIn is probably the best. Small business owner, I also wear multiple hats. I'm mostly the one managing the Facebook, the Instagram, the company LinkedIn messages. So 9 times out of 10, if you send one to any of our socials, I will more than likely see it as well. So
Nice.
but yeah, LinkedIn, Zach Simmons, I think actually Zach J. Simmons on LinkedIn. Just shoot me a message on there. I'm always replying to, everybody that's interested in getting into the industry, leveling up, doing business. I'm on there quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, Zach, I can't thank you enough. Love your story. Love seeing the growth. I get just so embarrassed. I'm like, yeah, I got this big foundation repair peering company. It's great. And then I hear about you guys growing and, what you've done in the last 2 years. And I'm like, damn. All right, man. But then again, I don't have the patience for those massive, thick RFP documents you guys have to send out,
Yep.
which your first one was 5 pages. It's probably a little thicker
not bad.
nowadays, but yeah.
104 was the last one.
Oh, okay. Yep. See, there it is.
Yeah.
But anyway, Zach, I appreciate you. Terry, we took some jabs pre-show and during show today. I appreciate you, buddy.
Hey, you got to make good choices with your partners.
That's right. So, and you know what? We need to get in alignment, Terry. We're like way off base here. You're Yingling, I'm Coors. You're in that office. I'm 8 feet over here in a different office.
I know.
Like, we need to get on the same page, buddy.
Same
Hey,
page.
But anyway, to all you guys listening, we appreciate you guys. Thank you, Drake, for all of your help producing our shows and our sponsors. But also, listen, we will see you guys next week on another episode of Beers with Contractors. Cheers, everybody.
See ya.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field, and be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.